They fear the night, for it is dark, and they fear the darkness, for that is where he lurks. This is your host, and today's question is, can I offer an update to the Jack the Ripper case? Jack the Ripper is one of history's most infamous serial killers, and his identity has never been confirmed. The string of brutal killings in London's East End in 1888 left the city and the world terrified. Today we're revisiting this chilling case and separating fact from fiction. Let's get into it. In Victorian England, prostitution was prevalent due to poverty and a lack of social safety nets. In the slums of London's Whitechapel district, women sold their bodies to survive. However, they were often exploited and abused by the very people who sought their company. As a result, these women were at the margins of society, seen as less than human by many and ignored by the police. But when 5 of them were brutally murdered in the span of a few weeks, the public outcry forced authorities to take notice. It all began with the murder of Marion Nichols on August 31st, 1888. She was found mutilated in a horrific state, her throat slit open and parts of her body missing. Just over a week later, on September 8th, Annie Poliakoff met a similar fate. Again, the killer displayed surgical precision, cutting open her abdomen and removing her organs. On September 30th, Elizabeth Stride was discovered lifeless with her throat slashed across the face. This time the killer spared the internal organs, but not the face. He had sliced off half of her nose and part of her left ear. It was clear that the killer was not only targeting sex workers, but also showing a pattern of behavior that suggested a madman was on the loose. The press quickly named him Jack the Ripper. The name came from a letter written in an unknown hand and sent to the Central News Agency on October 25, 1888. Signed, yours truly, Jack the Ripper. The missive boasted that the writer had taken the life of Polly, a reference to Polly Nichols, and intended to continue killing. This, plus descriptions of the crimes, led the public and the press to believe there was a serial killer among them. That is why the case still continues to fascinate us today. To this day, the mystery of Jack the Ripper remains unsolved. Despite extensive investigations and numerous theories, no one knows for sure who he was or why he committed his heinous crimes. There are several suspects whose stories have captured the public's imagination over the years. One of the most popular theories is that the killer was Montague John Deuce, a Polish immigrant who lived in London. Deuce was known to frequent the areas where the murders took place and had a history of violence against women. Some historians argue that the brutality of the crime suggests that the perpetrator was someone with a strong medical background. They point to the fact that the killer seemed to have anatomical knowledge, which led them to suspect Deuce, who was an expert in anatomy, having studied the subject in his native Poland. While circumstantial, this evidence has led some to believe that Deuce was the man behind the killings. Another popular theory is that Jack the Ripper was Francis Tumblety, an American barber who immigrated to London. Tumblety had a violent past, including an assault charge in the United States, and had been charged with stealing a razor. During a previous crime spree in London, he was also present in Whitechapel at the time of the murders, and was arrested for carrying a bloody knife soon after Elizabeth Stride's death. Although he was never charged in connection with the Jack the Ripper killings, some historians believe that the evidence against Tumblety is strong. After his arrest, he returned to America and resumed his criminal activities, which may explain why there were no further sightings of him in London. However, perhaps the most controversial theory is that the legendary detective Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was actually Jack the Ripper. Now hear me out before dismissing this idea as completely absurd. While Conan Doyle was indeed a prolific author and physician, he also served as a military doctor and had experience in surgery. Furthermore, his writings contain disturbing themes of violence against women, which some believe could be linked to the Ripper case. However, given the lack of concrete evidence linking Conan Doyle to the crimes, this theory remains just that, a theory. While each of these men had their own alibis for the time of the murders, none of them were ever convicted in connection with the case. Despite the passage of time, the mystery of Jack the Ripper continues to captivate people worldwide. His identity remains a mystery, and his crimes a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist in the human heart. As a culture, we are fascinated by true crime and serial killers. So much so that we often find ourselves wondering what would possess someone to commit such heinous acts. Well, according to psychologist Dr. Scott Bond, the answer may lie in the personality of the perpetrator, specifically in something called the dark triad of personality. This concept refers to a combination of 3 personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, which when combined, can lead to some seriously problematic behavior. People who possess these traits tend to be manipulative, deceptive, and lack empathy, making them more likely to engage in criminal activity, including serial killing. Drive Bond explains that the dark triad is more common among men than women, and that these traits are highly heritable. This means that if you have a family member with these traits, you may be more likely to inherit them as well. But don't worry, just because you have a family member with a dark triad personality doesn't mean you're destined to become a serial killer yourself. After all, most people who possess these traits will never commit violent crimes. Instead, they may simply be more likely to engage in risky behaviors or have difficulty maintaining long-term relationships. So while it is interesting to learn about the dark triad of personality and its potential link to serial killers, it's important to remember that most people who possess these traits are not violent criminals. It seems the real Jack the Ripper may have gotten away with his crimes, but that hasn't stopped people from trying to solve the mystery. From books to movies and TV shows, there are countless works of fiction and nonfiction that attempt to explain who he was and what drove him to commit his heinous crimes. One of the most popular theories is that Jack the Ripper was Prince Albert Victor, the eldest grandson of Queen Victoria. The theory goes that the prince, who died in an influenza pandemic in 1892, was actually Jack the Ripper, and that the royal family covered up his crimes to protect their reputation. However, there is no evidence to support this theory, and it's generally considered to be a conspiracy theory. Others believe that the killer was Walter Sickert, a painter and one of Britain's leading artists at the time. Sickert's paintings often depicted gruesome scenes, and he was known to frequent the pubs and brothels in Whitechapel. However, there is no hard evidence linking Sickert to the crimes, and the theory remains just that, a theory. In recent years, DNA testing has been used in an attempt to identify Jack the Ripper. In 2014, a shawl and a letter believed to have been owned by Catherine Eddowes, one of Jack's victims, were examined for DNA. The DNA profile obtained from the shawl did not match any of the known suspects, but it's important to note that contamination of the evidence cannot be ruled out. This means that while the DNA testing provides an interesting piece of the puzzle, it does not definitively solve the case. So who was Jack the Ripper? Despite extensive investigations and numerous theories, no one knows for sure. The identity of Jack the Ripper remains one of history's greatest mysteries. While the case has never been officially closed, most historians agree that the crimes were most likely the work of a single individual. However, others believe that there may have been multiple killers, with some even suggesting that Jack the Ripper may have been a group of people who worked together. Whatever the truth, the legacy of Jack the Ripper lives on in literature, film, and art. The brutality of the crimes and the mystery surrounding the killer's identity continue to fascinate and terrify people around the world. As we wrap up this episode, I want to hear from you. What do you think happened in the Jack the Ripper case? Do you believe that the person responsible was caught, or is the case still unsolved? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and join our growing community. Thanks for joining me today. Until next time, stay curious.